Hey everybody, welcome back to the Voluntary Exchange Podcast. This is No Chains. Today I just wanted to continue with the Turkish invasion of Syria. Just update you guys on what's been going on there and then hit on a couple other spots. So, going back a couple days, as I predicted, as soon as the Turks announced that they would be invading northeastern Syria, we found rumors that the Kurds were reaching out or thinking about reaching out to Assad and the Russians and the Syrian army in general to help protect them from Turkish forces invading the sovereign borders of Syria should, perk up Assad's forces a little bit. So, I see the Kurds continually, they're going to have to reach out to somebody. The invasion is underway at this point. There's been massive bombing from the air and artillery, totaling 181 targets have been hit. Ground troops have crossed the border at 4 different locations. Now, the ground troops that are crossing are a mix of the Turkish military and the Syrian, Freedom Army or Freedom, whatever the hell it is, which is really just a ragtag group of Al-Qaeda and ISIS members that the Turks are going to use as shock troops to get into northeastern Syria and kind of just go after the Kurds. The U.S. has pulled out and is continually to pull out of the region, and the international community has stepped in and, made their voices heard. The EU came out and says that they reject the idea of the safe zone that the Turks have submitted, saying that, this safe zone would only be able to be implemented if you had to first remove the population that is there, which is true. Of course, that doesn't seem to have any relevance to the Turks. The usual suspects: Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and then of course most of the European and Canada, European nations and Canada, all condemned the Turkish invasion. Iran canceled a visit, or one of their representatives canceled a visit after the strikes and the invasion took place. And, the threats are now out of Washington and Europe to Erdogan to back off. But Erdogan, of course, makes the point that if you don't let me do this, I'm going to send all the migrants that I have in my country that I want to populate the border area with. I will send them all into Europe, and that will cause a continued destabilization of the European Union and all the nation states there. He also mentioned that all these ISIS fighters that are right now in jail, being watched by the Kurds. The best way to deal with them is, have their host countries take them back. A lot of these ISIS fighters are from Europe, and he's again threatening to send them back if the Europeans and the U.S. don't get on board with him. And this is really all the U.S.'s creation. The U.S. backed the Kurds in this region and backed the rebels and members of Al-Qaeda in Syria overall against the government of Syria. And now the Syrian government is trying to reclaim all its territory, and now you have this awkward situation where the Turks, who have a larger and bigger geopolitical standing than Syria, are looking to pretty much carve out a portion of Syrian territory for themselves. Now, that's why I think the Kurds are going to enlist the Syrians. Now, on the home front in America, Trump's being called, a traitor and a this is he has to stop the genocide, and the Kurds are going to get genocided. So now ending a war that Washington doesn't agree with now is seen as genocide, and you're giving in to a dictator and all this stuff. I'm hoping that Trump holds fort here, but we'll see as this continues. I wanted to speak on other things except just Syria, but this is what's in the news. I wanted to speak about Yemen. We had and this is going back a week, we had the Saudis seem to be considering ceasefires in Yemen, noting that they really can't do what they came to do, which I'm not really sure what MBS wanted to do when he invaded, other than, satisfy some domestic interests of the Saudi Arabian zone. So now there seems to be a ceasefire being discussed with the Houthis through the United States. There's issues with the government that they've placed in the capital of Yemen, in southern Yemen, saying, hey, no, we want to be in control. You said we would be in control. So now they're dealing with their own puppet government that they put in, trying to satisfy them. The Houthis stated that they would pull back all attacks on Saudi Arabia if the Saudi Arabians stopped aiming missiles and firing missiles and having airstrikes on civilians in Yemen. And it does sound like there are members of the Saudi higher-ups that are interested in this, and they're looking for a third party to mediate negotiations, and that looks like it's going to be the United States. On a larger scale, before we get larger scale, we have the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran in general. The New York Times reported that there are indirect negotiations with Iran through the Saudi Arabians, and MBS has asked Iraq and Pakistan to talk to Iran on his behalf. He wants to avoid war. That's a quote. And the meetings would take place in Baghdad. I'm not sure about that anymore. And then Iran's response would welcome the Saudi Arabians with open arms if they stopped buying weapons from the United States. And it does seem like maybe the United States, much like we're seeing in Syria, is the party that needs to remove themselves from these relationships and let these relationships organically come to a head, and in some cases, hopefully, a peaceful solution. This has been Ron Paul's policy ever since he started talking back in 2007. At the same time, we have somebody, probably the Saudi Arabians or the Israelis or a combination of both, plotting to kill the Iranian general who was in charge of the Quds Force. There was planted explosives under his father's shrine where he would be visiting him at a religious holiday. The operatives who had planned the explosion moved into a house next door to the shrine, had dug a tunnel underneath, and had planted the explosives. Of course, they were caught. You have other issues where there's a story that I was reading about somebody in the Treasury Department, the U.S. Treasury Department, an undersecretary who is a dual citizen with the United States and Israel, and she is in charge of the sanction policy against Iran. And this is another gripe of the Iranians, a legit one in my opinion, to D.C. If they want to get any negotiations going, you got to kind of negotiate from a place of at least honesty. You can't have an agent of a foreign government that hates Iran and is in charge of the sanction program on Iran. So I'll link to that story. And then, built into this Saudi Arabian and Iranian back and forth is what looks more and more like some kind of proxy protest movement in Iraq, and that's continually to escalate. We have over 100 killed. Sadr, of Sadr City and former Iraq War II fame, has called for the government to resign. I've been following Patrick Coburn, spelled Cockburn. Patrick Coburn. He's on the ground in Baghdad, near the Tahrir Square, where the protests are taking place. And he said that he's saying that protests were planned months ago, and there was connections to foreign influence when they started to pop up. And then there was also there might be some connection to the assassination attempt on the Iranian general, and then also the stepping down or the forced resignation of a Iraqi general who is pretty famous now. He was a very celebrated general during the latest Iraq war against ISIS, and ridding the country of ISIS, and now he's being moved out of his position. The argument is that he's either too close to the United States or too close to Iranians, but he's not in league with the Iraqis. So there are some actual gripes of the Shia Iraqis against their government, but of course, like everywhere else, Hong Kong included, you're getting third-party influences from outside. Some of these militias that Sadr used to control and are now used as kind of the police and the police force and paramilitary forces of the Iranian government are out in the streets. One of them, named Hashid Shabib, I don't know how to say it. They are attacking television studios and other areas of journalism that are being protest. So this seems to be a Shia uprising against the Shia government of Iraq, and it's being cracked down upon by the Shia militias that have now sided with the government that are more Iran-based. So there is a kind of a feeling that these protests are at least being applauded from afar by the Saudi Arabians and the other Gulf states and the United States. So that's all I've got for today. A lot of information there, and I'll link to all my links when I get this up. But I appreciate you guys, the support I've gotten this week on some of my videos, and I appreciate you guys, bearing with some of the days off in between. But I don't like to I don't like to do a video just to make a video. Do a 3-minute spot and really have nothing to say. So I've been kind of spacing them out. I've also been, just busy with real life. So, again, I appreciate you guys. Check out more of our videos as they come this week. I'm No Chains. There's also Truth Force puts up videos on the channel, and we're trying to do a weekly podcast. You can also find our stuff over on Minds and on BitChute. You can also find me on the Steemit blockchain over on Steem. Steemit is the website on the Steem blockchain. I always confuse that. And then there's also 3Speak, the number 3speak.com, which is a YouTube alternative platform for video, and it's focused on free speech and non-censorship. So you might see some people over there that have been banned from other platforms. Tommy Robinson has an account over there. So those types of guys and girls, just anybody who's outside the mainstream that has been demonetized or throttled or kicked off any of the big tech platforms, you might find over there. So until next time, enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, and I'll try to get a video up this weekend. I'll see you guys later. Bye.